I'm Enarita Clore and welcome to Churikua. Tonight, in our fourth compilation from our second season, you will listen the legends of the Card of Death, Herne, the Spirit of Windsor, the Con Ghost, and the Lady from Mustio manor. And remember that the night awaits for you. Traditions tend to change over time, adapting to new changes and life patterns. I am from Tuxtla Gutierrez, Chiapas. I live in one of the oldest neighborhoods of the city, in which is celebrated every May 17th, San Pascualito, better known as El Rey San Pascual or San Pascual Bailon. There is a huge celebration for his sake, although I have to tell you that this celebration used to have more relevance than it has today, since many traditions, if they are not changed, tend to get lost and have become more and more intimate in our neighborhoods because of the lack of faith. Something that always bothers me is that by warning everyone about traditions and their importance, they tend to forget or overlook that if something exists, it has its reason. They always complain about misfortunes and they themselves are the ones who cause them. Here, it is extremely important that we do not go out after 11 or 11:30 at the latest, unless we pray and ask San Pascualito for his protection so that nothing happens to us. I grew up with these beliefs, and it was when I was young that I had the opportunity to understand their relevance. When I was about 16 or 17 years old, it was common to hear a wagon in the street, something that for me was a little hard to believe since they were barely busy and at the most in the fields. According to what I had been told, I should not go out late at night, especially around midnight, since San Pascualito would pass by at that time with his wagon for the souls of those whose time had come to leave this world. It was of utmost importance not to cross his path, since he could get angry and take your soul and take you with him. When I was little, I was afraid of him, but as I grew up, I only saw it as a custom, which I had to respect. But if I did not find any sense in its existence until relative life and God forced you to believe, such as me. One night, after the day of San Pascal, I heard the card. I had already been listening to it, but this time I heard it stopped. I had just had a baby I had just had a baby brother. At that time, there were 6 of us, including the new member of our family. I, I listened as it stopped and just heard some mules braying. It caught my attention and very carefully I looked out the window. Indeed, a wagon with mules was there, in front of my house. I decided to look at it, at what was going on with waking up my... A wagon with mules was there, in front of my house. I decided to look at it, at what was going on with waking up my other sibling. I decided to observe what was going on without waking up my other siblings. I saw someone approaching from the cart, a hooded man wearing a tunic and skeletal hands. I saw him enter the house, got into bed and pretended to sleep. I felt a cold wind, and I did not understand what was happening. I didn't know if I was shivering from the cold or from fear, maybe both. When I heard the mules moving, I got up and looked out the window. I noticed that he was carrying a bundle in his arms as if it were a baby, and he gingerly put it in the wagon. That night I could no longer sleep. I knew what I meant, and my greatest fears came true. The next morning, my baby brother had died of what the doctor called creep death. I thought about whether it was a good idea to tell my parents or anyone in particular, but I realized that it was the best to keep quiet. After all, San Pascualito came for his soul, and no one in the community doubted that it was so, and that my little brother's days were numbered. My surprise was even greater when I learned that a neighbor who was drinking was walking at night and was found dead on the street. San Pascualito had taken his soul, and most likely he saw him on his way and decided to take him too. Sometimes I wonder if San Pascualito comes to visit only his faithful, or if he continues to frequent these streets, being more flexible to modern times and now being very old. I keep asking myself when the wagon will pass by and park at the door of my home to take me as a passenger and leave this world as all those who had the pleasure long ago. It is well known that in Windsor, as in the rest of England, history claims too much of itself, among legends that carry its hidden mysticism and at the same time present in its identity, calling attention of friends and strangers to this day. I have to tell you that here in Windsor, in addition to its relevance for the castle, there is a character in which the memory of the residents is known, more like a myth than a legend. However, we all believe that its existence is there, somehow announcing its passage through this world. It is interesting to know the legends and myths which are from different places in between or with different stories and variants. Windsor being an emblematic place, and especially the castle, is surrounded by one of the most forests. This forest has someone whose origin we know and we do not know at the same time. This is the case of Herne. I have to tell you the story that my grandfather told me time ago. This story goes back a long time, taking into account that today I am someone who is eagerly awaiting retirement age to enjoy the well deserved rest that experience and gray hair demand as the years go by. Like everything else, Windsor grew with the passage of time, but back then there was even more forest than now. My grandfather used to visit the entrance to the forest on occasion when it was necessary to pass through when he was meeting friends.
The proximity of the house where my great-grandparents, my grandfather, and his siblings lived at that time was very close to the forest. My grandfather at that time was about 9 or 10 years old. They were playing in the streets after school until some strangers showed up, and after asking my grandfather for some money or accompanying them to where there were wealthy people to rob them. The other children decided to run away. They grabbed my grandfather and forced him to go with them. Although my grandfather refused, they beat him and threatened never to see his family again. It became dark and the road was barely visible. They were inside the forest and he, trying to buy some time, made them go in circles. When they realized it, they began to beat him until suddenly they heard a thought. They saw a humanoid figure, someone walking, and they began to curse and challenge him until they saw who was there. They could not believe their eyes. It was a man with the head of a deer and antlers. That entity growled and with a loud, fast, and rough voice shouted at them, "Get away, never to return, or you will be victims of the hunt." They were so scared that they fell to the ground, and as soon as he finished speaking, they ran away. My grandfather, fearful, stood behind a bush and said a few words in a kind tone. "You need not to be afraid. The danger is over. Now, inhabitant of these lands, return to your home." Then my grandfather jumped up and ran away. He just looked back and saw a shadow in the moonlight, a humanoid figure with the head of a deer and antlers, and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Thank you, sir. What's your name?" "My name is Herne." "Thank you very much, Mr. Herne. Thank you," he said while waving his hands, turned around and ran home. You must be wondering why I am telling you this story. Recently, my grandfather had departed this world, and he asked me to leave something for him in the forest. He told me how to get there, a place I went with him a couple of times when I was younger, but this time I was alone, at night, and with just the light of the moon and a flashlight. I left my grandfather's errand on a rock. I walked away a bit and stopped dead in my tracks when I heard footsteps. I turned around and a humanoid figure with a deer's head and antlers was there, barely visible and hidden behind the bushes. In case you are wondering, my grandfather's order a deer was a deer head, the size of a fist, that I carved for him as a gift when I was a teenager. He asked me to leave it in the forest with a little note saying, "Thank you very much, Mr. Herne, for your intervention and help. If in the other world we meet again, it will be a pleasure." Herne is a character that, although its history and origins tend to change, There are stories that say he was a great hunter who, after saving kids, some said that Herne died, and being a hunter was alerting the king from the forest of Windsor of the dangers. Others say he was a hunter in the service of the king and was hung in an oak. Others say he's even a spirit of the forest that cares and protects it. Whatever the truth is, thanks to his intervention, my grandfather was able to escape from danger. Now that you know more about Herne, what do you think is his true origin?
I am a school teacher, and although it is a heavy job, it is a beautiful one. I love my profession, and just something that I recently lived made me to reminded me my first days as a teacher. I have been teaching for a long time, and there have been many changes in education since then. First, I will proceed to tell you about the recent events. This was relatively recently. Nowadays, classes ended at 4 p.m. I usually stay an extra hour since there are students who stay extra hours to study, and there is always someone who, from time to time, looks for me to explain the subjects they are having difficulty with or who are preparing for an important exam and improve their performance. Just 3 days ago, I left at 7 p.m. I live near my work. It takes me half an hour to walk there. There is a store just a block away from where I live. Once in the store, I realized that I didn't have my wallet with me, so I had to go back to school. Once there, I talked to the custodian and I told him about the situation and went up to the teacher's lounge. I started to hear a noise like a knock. There was a little wind, so I assumed that some window had been left open. I looked into the nearby classrooms and nothing. Everything was in order. The noise went on and on, so I kept looking and nothing. Everything in order until I got to the teacher's room. I looked rigorously and my wallet was on my desk, right where I usually leave it. Once in my hands, I checked the windows and nothing. Everything in order. I kept hearing noise. I kept checking. Since the noise was getting louder and louder, and right there was the door of the roof, which was closed, and there was the noise. It was a student with a shabby, dirty uniform, and she was walking bent over with her head on the floor, and every time she went down each step, she let her head fall, which shook as it fell with such a clatter that it seemed that she did not care or what she had a broken neck. I covered my mouth so as not to scream, and she kept going down slowly. But as I turned around and tried to leave, I hit a cone, and my briefcase Hitting it made such a loud noise that I got her attention, and she went down faster and faster. I hit every chance, and I got and here. Kong, Kong, not here. I hit again, and then I hear Kong, Kong, not here. I went down to another floor, and she shouted, Kong, Kong, not here. I finally arrived at the entrance of the building. The man was waiting for me there. He asked me, Professor, you took too long. Are you alright? Yes, I'm fine, I said dryly. I was worried. You took too long. Did you find your wallet? That's right. Sorry for the delay. It took me some work to find it. I'm glad to hear that. Shortly after we said goodbye, and at the entrance of the school, I saw him enter the building to make his rounds. The security guard died as a heart attack in the early hours of the morning. I could not believe what was happening. I felt so bad that I went to talk to the principal and told her what had happened the night before. She was honest with me and told me that she believed in that legend, but that several security guards claimed to have seen or heard it. Even said that they resigned shortly after they were in charge, but that it was such a strong scare that caused him to have a heart attack, or at least that was what the doctors had informed her as a possibility. Why did it remind me of my... Because since I remembered, it was said that there was a ghost haunting the school. The much acclaimed legend of the ghost Kong Kong. The very acclaimed legend of the Kong Kong ghost, a ghost who died in an unfortunate supposed accident. It was said to be a student or sometimes a pupil who, after dying and once classes were over, was found dead next day, as if she had fallen from the rooftop. It is said that she could not resist the pressure of being the best in the class, since she let herself from all distractions that might detract from her studies. The pressure caused her to commit suicide. Other versions said that she took her own life when she was surpassed in grades by another student. But in my case, I have to tell you that I live in a situation like that in my school, or rather my first school as a teacher. I had two very competitive students with excellent grades, although the results spoke for themselves and said that the difference was minimal. For them, it was abysmal. Both would stay late many times. I would leave along with other teachers and they would continue studying. In that time, it was common that the schools closed at 8 p.m. or later. Until the following week, we found the student dead. At first, we thought she had committed suicide after the grief and all that her death entailed. We went on with our daily lives. Until that time, only outstanding student appeared outside the school repeating, Kong Kong not here, Kong Kong not here, Kong Kong not here, Kong Kong here. When I ran into her in the building, she was still repeating. I ran out to help, and just a short time later, she was dead in the bathroom. The situation tore me apart. It took me a while to recover, and now I remembered all that. I called in sick. And now, as long as I stay in this school, I am sorry for my students, but I will not be leaving so late again. But I will not be leaving so late again. It still resonates in my mind not to have done anything to stop them and avoid this tragedy. As the teacher of both, and now that she found the chance, sure comes to remind me that soon, once again, I will hear Kong, Kong, here. Sometimes the unexpected comes out of nowhere and bursts into our lives suddenly. I have to tell you how a dream somehow changed my life. I am not one to dream very often, but when I do, they are dreams that I barely have to remember. However, the dream I am about to share with you led me to reflect on my life and to question many other things more. That night, I dreamed of living in a beautiful manor with beautiful gardens and beautiful finishes, almost dreamy. I remember arriving with a woman I called aunt, so elegant, and seeing myself in the mirror with beautiful dresses from the 19th century, if I'm not wrong. I was the victim of an arranged marriage, highborn from what I could elucidate. I was soon married with children. I felt I was getting along as well as possible with my husband, but with many disputes. He was a great and influential character. My children were enjoying themselves. However, I was frustrated by everything, by being a woman, by being made less, and I enjoyed writing. When I felt the loss of a son, the fourth apparently, I had disagreements with my husband and I wrote a book. That book was published and I asked that my identity won't be revealed. Shortly after that, I was feeling so sad, so desolate, bereft, not to mention other ailments that I took something the doctor had prescribed me. But I felt so bad and that it wasn't working, that I took some more, started to feel sick, lost consciousness, and woke up suddenly. You can imagine how difficult it was to have seen something so exact and vivid. The strangest thing was how clear it was. Not even I could believe it. Until one day, I decided to just stop thinking about it. But I didn't forget it. It just stopped being in my mind as a priority. Everything went on until one day, my partner, as our anniversary, decided to plan a trip to Svartslott, and there we took a tour that took us to its main attractions. And what would be my surprise? The house of my dreams, so beautiful and richly decorated, was there. It was not a dream, it was real, with some changes as you can imagine, but in essence it was the same. So acclaim the manor or the castle called Mustio. We did not hesitate to take the tour and visit the museum. I did not stop feeling amazed and at the same time hypnotized by the place. So there was something strange. I felt strange as if there was something that called me and that I did not understand what happened until I saw in one of the portraits of the house the great Mary Linder, one of the most renowned and important inhabitants of the whole country, not to mention that of the most outstanding of the manor. I listened in wonder to her life and her sad death without saying a word. It was as if that dream came back to me even more intensely than when I had it. I continued to listen and watch in wonder all the way until we ended up staying there. In spite of the beautiful room, that night the dream came back again, this time with more detail about the pain in seeing myself dead and crying to my children, my family, because of my death. Shortly after, I saw myself walking through the halls, making sure everything was all right, but no one saw me. In the distance, I saw everything. I felt pain, sorrow, guilt for not wanting to continue living until I simply continued there, walking through the halls and the place that once was my home. I woke up suffocated and I had no choice but to tell my partner about what I had dreamed before and what I had just dreamed, to which just simply answered me smiling. Maybe I woke up suffocated and I had no choice but to tell my partner about what I had dreamed before and what I had just dreamed right now, to which simply answered me smiling. Maybe she was calling you and now you're here. What are you gonna do? The next day, we decided to tour the rest of the property, and as guests, we had some access and freedom to some of the facilities. I took some flowers and simply I decided to throw them into the water and dedicate eternal rest. While we were walking in the Corpden, a place we decided to explore to know more about the surroundings until something went wrong. I slipped and fell into the water. The last thing I remember before I lost consciousness from the blow was hearing a voice echoing from inside me saying, "Thank you." When I woke up, I was out of the water. They took me to the doctor, and apart from the blow and a sprained ankle and a dislocated shoulder, Everything was fine, already bad for having ruined the trip. We returned to the hotel and decided to enjoy what was left of our stay. And while my partner was relaxing in the sauna, I bought the book of this fantastic woman to read it and know even more about her, more than what apparently she had already shared with me. As I returned to my routine at this incredible place, and as if by a strange coincidence, I thought I saw the silhouette of a woman in one of the windows of one of the buildings, contemplating the outside and waving her hand elegantly, as if waving goodbye, as if she saw me, to which I simply returned the gesture, while she vanished like smoke dissipating in the wind.